on with us today. I'm excited to chat.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, Sherrod.
Um, why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about Bridging Innovation Institute, the inspiration behind it, how you leverage sort of your past experience, and what the goals of the organization are today.
Sure. I would be happy to. It's actually Bridging Innovation Institute was born from an ecosystem versus designed to build ecosystems in a way. So it's kind of a full circle moment. For the past 7 years, I've been involved with the West Virginia entrepreneurship ecosystem from its early stages on that K-12 side, building our pipeline within West Virginia. And it, as a grassroots movement, had grown to the point where we were kind of at a friction point with how much more we could scale without a dedicated backbone nonprofit. So the adventure group was serving as its fiscal agent in multiple capacities from its events and a couple of organizational capacities, but it really needed a dedicated nonprofit to be able to move that work forward. And we went through a strategic planning process where it actually came up from the ecosystem several times. They were like, wait, like this is not already a thing. And so we were having some conversations around who could move that forward. I had about 10 years of experience in the adventure group's nonprofit leadership realm and understood that landscape. And so I was the one that took that leap and founded Bridging Innovation Institute. It serves indefinitely or as long term as West Virginia will have us as the backbone of that work. And then it also is designed to support rural and nascent ecosystems nationwide that are interested in building out their ecosystems.
Can we spend a little bit of time on the K-12 thing? Sorry, I'm already off
Please,
script.
yes, actually, because I have to tell you, like, if you would have asked me a couple of years prior where my future career would go, I would have told you I was staying in K-12 indefinitely. Like, I have an absolute adoration for K-12 education. I think education's foundational, and I never would have left my nonprofit if it hadn't have been for this opportunity and falling in love with this second passion. So yes, please ask me K-12
Um,
anytime.
Can you just talk a little bit about the philosophy behind sort of entrepreneurial pipeline building in K-12, why that's important? Like, it's not, from our perspective at ecomap, it certainly doesn't get, like, I think the attention it deserves. I was
Yeah.
listening to a podcast the other day, and it was talking about how there was all this emphasis historically on like STEM, right?
Mm.
STEM and STEAM, and we've got to get people, learning computer programming at age 4.
Yep.
And now with the introduction of AI, we're sort of like rethinking that. Does that matter? And I would put forth that like the entrepreneurial skills that you can teach someone through K-12 are actually going to be super valuable into the future. And so I'm curious like how you think about K-12 entrepreneurial ecosystem building and how that maybe is evolving as well. So maybe just spend a couple minutes on that if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually think that West Virginia has really been thoughtful in how they've approached talent pipeline development across their ecosystem. K-12 and even as young as pre-K have been involved in the conversations around the entrepreneurial ecosystem from its very core. In that we as a state recognized we were exporting a lot of our talent. We have an older population. In order for us to inspire entrepreneurs that want to stay and work and build here, we needed to start with our youth. And I think there's been a common feel across the entire state with that our youth are very important. We want them to stay. We want them to work and develop. So K-12 has always been at the conversation. Similarly, education always has a question of how do we best prepare our students for the future? And more, it has been not necessarily specific subject areas or, specific competencies, but it has been business acumen and how do we make good employees and how do we have critical thinkers and problem solvers. They were called 21st century skills, they're STEM mindsets. Like there's all this talk about how do we build that in our youth, and the work that I was doing with the adventure group, and I think that they have really led and partnered with to create across the state is entrepreneurial mindset is going to benefit a student whether they start a business or whether they go into a business. And so that's really been championed across our entire system. There are strong partnerships with the West Virginia Department of Education and the higher education institutions. We have a really robust pre-K to 16 pipeline where at each stage they're getting exposure to design thinking, entrepreneurial mindset. They actually are launching businesses. Adventure has a statewide competition called Spark West Virginia that gives real cash to kids. We're not just talking about it. I think we're really doing the work there. And I think that started from the very beginning, which is really powerful.
Yeah. Um, Amazing. Every time we talk, I'm like fascinated with West Virginia's ecosystem. It's like it doesn't get its due yet, in my opinion, but there's
We're a
so
hidden
much,
gem.
yeah, but there's so much like really good activity going on.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good segue to Bridging Innovation Institute, and talking about supporting the whole small business, like what that means in practice, where technical assistance shows up and where it might not be enough. And so, what role do you see technical assistance and wraparound services play in supporting the whole of a small business, like not just the business, but also the person behind it?
Yeah.
And what gap were you responding to when this work, first showed up for you?
Sure. I'll thread the needle here even further in that
Cool.
when we talk about supporting the whole student, and that's what education systems are supposed to be doing, this we're talking about entrepreneurship ecosystems supporting the whole founder. It's the same type of uh, thinking in that we are not just providing them with the specific technical expertise that they need to launch their business, but that we're creating the system in which they can thrive. And
Mm,
so in West Virginia, we know we face challenges, as do many other rural communities related to workforce, childcare, internet activity, um, like all of the support systems that you need to have in place to be able to focus on building your business. That's what the ecosystem does is we really coordinate what that looks like. So that could be we meet with a founder and they're talking through whether or not actually launching the business is the appropriate next step for their family. We can even get them in touch with the right people to talk through from a counseling perspective. How do you
mm,
get your family on board with this? I just had a phone call from a founder that said it's really hard for me to schedule a meeting with you via email because I'm working on my farm. Can you give me a call and I'll keep an eye out for my tractor? It's understanding that the circumstances that founders are building in are bigger than just business licensure and capital. It's
mm.
the whole person and how do we support them in that aspect.
Yeah. Um, and it's interesting because, West Virginia to me is the type of ecosystem where the ecosystem builder can know the counselor, right?
Mhm.
Like that's not even necessarily really that possible in a lot of highly dense, like what we think of as successful ecosystems. So, sort of turning what many I think would perceive as a challenge into an actual opportunity, I think is one of the themes that I see, when I talk to you and learn more. Um, you have historically talked about needing trust-based systems that bridge education, workforce, and entrepreneurship. Can you say a little bit more about like how that trust has been built over time in West Virginia and like what it actually looks like, how it shows up?
Sure. Yeah, I think trust is the foundation of any strong ecosystem. If you don't have trust, it's very difficult for one, coordination to happen, and then two, collaboration to develop. I mentioned this when I was introducing how Bridging Innovation Institute got started. It came out of the ecosystem. Our ecosystem for 7 years was grassroots. It was volunteer led. It was folks coming to the table because they recognized that by coordinating their individual programs could be stronger and they could produce better outcomes for their founders. That didn't happen with an organization of 175 people coming together at once. It started with two individuals, Tara St. Clair at WVU and Bill Woodrum, who was at the time at Marshall University, which are also the state's largest higher education institutions and have historically been kind of rivals. And you know that if you can split the state almost by like who goes to Marshall, who goes to WVU, that kind of mindset really was permeating that space. But they were competing over resources and they were hosting events on the same day. And they had a neutral third party, which I think is important. I'd like to come back to that idea of like a neutral third party defining ecosystem building versus resource providing too. But they had a neutral third party, Joe Cap, who has been my mentor, and I appreciate him so much. He came in and said, "You guys need to at least talk. Like, just have a conversation, talk about what you're doing, and see how you can collaborate. And they didn't want to. Like if you hear them talk about it, they're like, we met at a neutral Mexican restaurant, and WVU brought somebody else with them. Tara brought Liz Vitullo, who was also just an awesome rock star within the ecosystem. But and Marshall was like, oh, of course, WVU brings more people. So it's just they didn't want to talk, but um, over time, they realized that by aligning what they were doing, they were strengthening each of their individual narratives. And so they started with something as simple as a meeting where they invited people to show up. And I think, oh, I set off. What a profound thought there. Um, they started with that simple meeting and they invited whoever wants to show up. And it's that simple that they worked with the willing and they said, we're going to host a monthly meeting, we're going to share a Google Calendar, and we're just going to keep at it and keep inviting people to the table and whoever comes. So for me, trust-based ecosystem is work with the willing. Eventually, you'll get to this point, and I think we've reached that within West Virginia where if there's more willing than unwilling, the unwilling look, they're like
Mm,
they become almost it's like you don't work with people, like
mhm.
what? And then the ecosystem itself kind of holds its own accountability. So for me, it's just been continuing to work with the willing, continuing to invite everyone to the table, and then building from that trust. Related to that is just following your word. Like if you say you're going to do something, show up. If you're going to respond, respond quickly and with accountability, and just keeping each other in check with that has been really important. And now as an ecosystem, I think we all self-check and self-regulate really well.
Yeah. Um, we'll see if we can't bring in some more special effects throughout
I
the
I
show
have a
here.
lot. I have a lot. I know I have a they come up. I get really enthusiastic. It's my hand gesture.
One of the things that I think you alluded to that I'll just put a finer point on is this like tipping point for
hmm
coordination within an ecosystem. And you named individuals specifically. Yes, they were at institutions, but I just want to emphasize that like a single person can sort of have an outsized impact
Yeah.
on what the trajectory of an ecosystem looks like. And so sort of marching towards this tipping point, where to your point, the willing kind of outnumber the unwilling. And so
Yeah.
now it becomes a willing ecosystem, I think is really interesting and
Yeah.
something that feels more tangible than this sort of grandiose, we've got to get the ecosystem coordinated. Well, what if we start small? We take a
Yeah.
crawl, walk, run approach, we build a little momentum and sort of the ecosystem will kind of follow in tow. It's one of the things we focus on at ecomap, right? We try to start with information accessibility initially across a number of different organizations. And so if everyone is reading from the same sheet of music, we think we can make, more symphonic sound. So as the backbone organization for a West Virginia entrepreneurship ecosystem, you're coordinating with a lot of partners with different mandates, different funders. How does that impact like the coordination and also culturally sort of that idea of being willing? Like, what does that look like day to day trying to coordinate all these partners with different mandates, et cetera?
Sure. So I think this is where I think it's an appropriate time to differentiate between what I'm doing as ecosystem building and what resource providers are within how we think about it.
Hmm.
So I and the West Virginia Entrepreneurship Ecosystem and Bridging Innovation Institute do not do any direct service to entrepreneurs. We do not provide capital. We do not do any coaching programs. What we do are, and I heard this term actually at the Federal Reserve Conference, we triage and we trampoline entrepreneurs. So if they need navigation support, we come in, we kind of see where they're at, and then I give them, or the ecosystem gives them a warm referral to the appropriate partner. What that has done and how that has helped build trust and accountability and even just willingness to participate is the resource providers are getting stronger referrals on the front end. They're getting more responsiveness from the founders that are willing and ready to be participating in their programs, and they're getting almost a sales funnel for their efforts. So we're benefiting their pipeline. And then on the opposite side, the entrepreneurs are receiving better support from the get-go and better navigation support. So they're getting to the right answers immediately when the questions are happening versus kind of navigating just the wealth of resources that are out there on their own. So it's kind of a virtuous cycle in that the entrepreneurs are better prepared to pursue opportunities that they're ready for, and the resource providers are getting stronger founders for their programs, which then ultimately leads to stronger outcomes for them to report on.
Hmm.
So it's just this
Hmm.
beautiful kind of cycle that has developed over time now.
Yeah. Um, Triage and trampoline, that's good. Let's talk about maybe what I would call, from an outsider's point of view, the flagship event, Bridging
Yep.
Innovation Week, because I think that that's a really strong signal. It's now a statewide event, over 1,000 attendees. What
Yeah.
did it take to get that level of buy-in over time? And maybe what surprised you, like putting that event together for so many years?
So I think this is where we kind of made a smart choice starting off in that we started with convening and coordination rather than trying to jump straight to collaboration. What we wanted to do was get people in the same room, on the same meeting, sharing what they were doing, not proposing that they needed to stop what they were doing and do something else, but just giving opportunity and space for people to share what they were doing. And bridging was designed to be the in-person catalyst for that. So it has a couple of benefits to the ecosystem, but it also is just the largest statewide place for everyone that's interested in this space to get together. We cover the costs of the week, and we've got generous sponsorships, strong state partnerships to make that possible. That the ticket price is really low. We're going to raise it a little bit as we continue to grow, and we need to generate revenue now that we are a standalone nonprofit, but it will continue to stay low for founders. And what that does is we have all of our resource partners can have access to host activities, events there, and we cover the costs. So it's a cost savings for them because if they're going to do a conference on their own, they're covering all those costs where they can align with us. We do all of the registration, the management. So it's a benefit to the exposure for the resource provider, and then it's a benefit for the entrepreneur to get all of that in one place. It started with it started in Charleston, and we do like a day of entrepreneurship ecosystem workshops, education, convening, and then there's competitions as well. So we have several statewide competitions that we try to align with Bridging Innovation Week, again, on purpose, because we have a lot of investors that don't necessarily live in the state. We give them one central day to come in and see West Virginia's talent show up and show out. And so that's also a central place for investment to happen. So Country Roads Angel Network holds an event there now. Any of our local partners also typically hold their welcome. Here's our local community. So over time, it has just really become this almost like we call it like a South by Southwest model, where it's just a variety of events around that core focus of bringing folks together. You asked what's interesting. I think we as an ecosystem started with coordination of the resource providers, who's doing what are we doing, kind of how do we come together. We're coming on our sixth Bridging Innovation Week where we're organizing, the participation has trended, and now it's more than half of those folks are founders that
Hmm.
actually we don't know individually. They're just coming together because they found the space. And so basically, it was the if you build it, they will come. We built something valuable, and now we're seeing a massive shift within the ecosystem where the large part of our participation and our attendance on our monthly meetings are people that we don't know because they're founders that have found us through word of mouth and referrals. And that's what we want to see. Like we don't want to know over half of the people there. That becomes a little incestuous as an
Hmm.
ecosystem. We want to know that we're an open space where people can come and learn and engage and then get connected.
Yeah, very cool. I think Heather mentioned this at the outset, but just a reminder, if you're in the audience and have a question, feel free to use the Q&A, and we'll try to get to it towards the end. What would you tell a state or region that's sort of earlier in their coordination collaboration journey? Like, where would you recommend they start?
I think I would suggest one starting point and I would suggest one helpful thought mindset. Balloons. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna stop.
Is this a setting you
It's
have?
yeah, so sorry everyone. In case anybody wants sidebar, if you're interested in these reactions, they're available within MacBook. And I do them sometimes on accident. So my bad. I'm really excited about this. Anyways, so I would say that a starting point would be just to try to coordinate a call and see what people are doing, get updates. If you can and you have access to bringing people together, encourage them to come together and meet each other. I think we really try to put the human aspect of the people that we're working with in here. So you should know when somebody's has a new grandbaby or when somebody got married. Like that's our goal is to create not just creating that human side so that when you're talking about collaboration, you also know how that's benefiting the individual person. So that's what I would say. Coordinate a time where you can just get on, share what you're doing, and try to just update and understand what everyone is doing within the ecosystem. The second, I guess, mindset shift would be that that doesn't need to come with money. Like there should not be that it should not require your organization to receive funding for you to be willing to get on a call and to talk to others. So none of this, we didn't have any funding operationally for several years. It was just folks coming together because they knew that by creating collective impact, it would benefit them individually. So kind of going in that with that mindset, if you lead with funding, I think you fail with funding. And
Mhm.
so, kind of having that mindset from the start that it's good to have these conversations, it's good to coordinate efforts to strengthen the ultimate outcome versus leading with funding to require and to catalyze that facilitation.
Mm. Um, Going back to the triage and trampoline, Amber, question from the audience. Can you talk a little bit more about what triage support looks like for entrepreneurs, small business owners, and who like makes up the triage team?
hmm Yeah, so right now we also have been operating on the mindset that there's no wrong door into the ecosystem, and we've kind of naturally evolved over time to recognize that there also is not a single entry point into an ecosystem. So the first thing from triage is to make sure that all of the folks in the ecosystem are speaking the same language and understanding how to articulate the value. So what we do is I you can reach out to the ecosystem directly and I will contact and coordinate and see where folks are and have individual meetings with them. We also have we have several other state partners that are supported in doing that same thing. We have West Virginia Business Link, they have navigation services, and we just established a West Virginia Office of Entrepreneurship that if you reach out to them, they will help triage and using the same kind of set of criteria, look at where an individual is and refer them appropriately. We also have kind of across the resource ecosystem, if an entrepreneur has come in and connected to a resource, they are comfortable then referring them to the ecosystem for the initial first touch point. So we kind of route those people to us and to those state entities to help them get that individual support. So it's a small but mighty team right now, and we are working on some automations to help with the entrepreneur triaging themselves a little bit before we get on individual conversations with them, just because that is a massive amount of time. But we also want to limit the entrepreneur feeling like they've been sent another form or another thing that they need to fill out before they actually get a human. So we really are trying to focus on a human touch point on the front end, which is typically an email connection and a 15 to 30-minute phone call to see how they are doing.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Um, we at shifting gears a little bit to some impact and measurement stuff. We recently at Ecomap rolled out the economic intelligence monitor, where we're looking at a number of economic development KPIs, everything from unemployment rate. The newest one has to do with business applications, churn rate, all the way down to the county level. It's been really popular with our customers as we try to sort of connect ecosystem building with economic development said in like the broadest terms. I can dig in on that. But for you, how are you thinking about measuring impact for your organization? We talked about this a little bit in sort of the pre-meeting and how that sort of is different from um, the impact measurements of a full ecosystem.
Yeah, I think and just very transparently, this is, I think, the hardest part of ecosystem building is how do you measure the impact of an ecosystem when the system has been generally designed to measure the impact of an individual program? Whereas we're trying to track if Johnny has come from an SBDC coach to Faster West Virginia, and then he advances and he goes into G Beta at Marshall, which is an accelerator program, and then he gets connected to like we're trying to map all of that, whereas all of those individual organizations are also tracking that. So for our ecosystem, what we're really trying to do is look at things like referral velocity. How quickly are we referring to the entrepreneur to the right place? How accountable are we to getting back to them? Are they getting the right resources? We've even kind of noodled around the idea of creating almost like a founder friendliness score where we ask founders what are the things that matter the most to you and can we track those across the ecosystem and even at the organizational level and create a dashboard for that type of accountability. So for me across the ecosystem it's less about uh, the the individual jobs created, those are all great, but it's more about how are we working as a system to support those entrepreneurs? And will that over time advance our baseline counting data, our baseline state data, and move forward? So the
Yeah.
Kaufman indicators of entrepreneurship, I mean, we use those from like opportunity share of entrepreneurs, those types of things, the bigger economic development standings, like you're saying. But from an ecosystem lens, we're trying to look at it from what are all the economic development data points that we're collecting, but also what are the levers and the impacts that cause those to move?
Yeah, yeah. Attributing the program to the outcome has always been a challenge. It's something we're working really hard on at ecomap to help our customers do that better.
Yeah.
I had a conversation today with the senior technology advisor for the city of Atlanta, and he talked about having a billboard which tells like the founder stories and the scoreboard, like how does that ecosystem actually measure up to peers, et cetera. How do you think about communicating impact to funders and stakeholders in a way that captures both the business outcomes and the human ones as well?
Yeah, I think we are really going to be leaning into anecdotal evidence, and can that anecdotal evidence identify themes and again levers that we can track a little bit more strongly to tell the human story. Like I could sit here and I just list founder stories about how we've supported them as an ecosystem and the different touch points. I was in a meeting an event the other day with G Beta, and one of the individuals there, he said, we only brought this program because you actually connected us to this individual at Bridging Innovation Week, and that's how this whole program got started. And so when all of that data lives in conversations and anecdotes, it's like it's very hard to capture that type of spirit, but that's the type of stuff that we're trying to capture is can we take stories and can we thematically look at them and create movement metrics on those?
Mhm.
And that's kind of where we're leaning into what is the actual ecosystem narrative here and how do we articulate that? So stay tuned if anybody wants to to brainstorm that with me. I know Sherrod will be talking about it for
Yeah.
the next several years, but that's the type of stuff we're trying to figure out. How do you quantify stories in a way that can compete with economic development measures or at least be put in connection to them?
Yeah, yeah. Makes a ton of sense. If you have questions in the audience, drop them in. We're getting ready to wrap up here. My last question for you, Amber, is uh, with everything that's happening right now, there's a lot of change. I think it's a really dynamic environment. What's one thing that is making you nervous about this work? And then we'll end on a positive note with something that you're really excited or optimistic about as well.
Yeah, I think one thing that makes me nervous is we know it's a changing let's just say a changing philanthropic landscape right now. There have been shifts within how several of the programs that have had pretty historic funding um, get their funding. We've got resource providers that are pretty heavily aligned with federal dollars that have some funding risk. And I think for me, the biggest note is just how can we continue as an ecosystem, wrap our arms around that, and make sure that we're not losing core components of an ecosystem due to funding lapse. Like we've got to make sure that resource still maintains support and that it's still there for the entrepreneurs to be able to access those types of resources. So how can we, even as resource providers ourselves, as nonprofits ourselves, build our capital stack and build our revenue diversity so that we are strengthening our ability to continue to serve, and especially in areas that have maybe only one or two specific programs available to them in rural environments. So for me, that's something that I think is a threat, but an opportunity for us to really rethink what this means as an ecosystem to do that.
And what are you excited about?
Oh gosh, I'm excited about a lot of stuff. I will no fireworks. I think I'm very excited about the fact that there are so many conversations around this as a field, as a effort moving forward, that ecosystem building is a valuable tool and a valuable and essential component of economic development, and having entrepreneurship as a priority is huge. Personally, within West Virginia, I'm really excited about our Office of Entrepreneurship that just got started. It's designed to coordinate at the state level the agency engagement. So I think having that strong model for state level coordination that can then advocate for how we can reduce tape for entrepreneurs and we can kind of advance strong regulatory policy movements. I think that is kind of our next era of where we see this happening. So.
Um, we have a question from the audience. What happens when you don't have differentiation amongst ecosystem providers? Um, Everyone does all things to all entrepreneurs. Like, how do you sort of help the ecosystem work through that?
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting question because what has happened over time, we had a ton of this. We had a ton of early stage entrepreneurship support. Everyone was offering the same thing at the same times. What has happened was because of the participation of those folks and identifying where they were overlapping, and we as an ecosystem kind of nudging them or even financially encouraging them. We have strong statewide support from the Benedum Foundation, who, if they get a request that is aligned or coming in and bringing something new, they say, "Have you talked to the ecosystem about this actually filling a gap?" It's really nice to see that type of kind of philanthropic push, nudge too, if we're going to have funding. But we have been able to articulate, hey, you are having difficulty filling your programs because you are doing the same thing as this other program on a different time. So we've naturally seen people kind of self-select, just again, because we are a trust-based ecosystem, self-select the items that they're good at and adjust accordingly to meet
Mhm.
that differentiation. So I would say that that is something that comes naturally from trust. That's going to be very hard to do without trust and coordination on the front end. I don't know that it's intentional all the time. It could be that they just don't actually even understand that they are duplicating because they've never coordinated a call to talk about that.
Mhm.
So it was over time through coordination, like, hey, I'm going to do this on this topic, you do it on this topic. Um, we are talking a lot about succession planning as an ecosystem, and we had kind of seen that percolate up across several different conversations. So we just said, hey, let's all get on a call, talk about what we would like to see. And we actually just wrote a collaborative application to create a statewide strategy specific to succession planning. So it's that type of coordination. Again, that comes from several years of trust building, but that's
Yeah.
where it really, I think, once you've got that trust in place, that's when you can kind of call out people that are duplicating efforts.
Yeah. And, just to, as we close here, sort of re-emphasize this idea of like crawl, walk, run. And like, it sounds to me that a lot of this started from a meeting at a Mexican restaurant,
A
right?
meeting at
Or,
that's yeah, Mex go get food. Go get food together.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then coordinating a call, right? So like you can sort of start small on this long journey towards building a trust-based system and collaboration.
Can I say one note too
Yeah,
that I think is really, and actually we would love if you all are interested in joining our monthly meetings. They can be a little intimidating, but um, they're designed pretty intentionally. We give 2 minute slots, and that's it. It has a timer when you get done giving your update on what you're working on or your opportunity, music plays, and you've got to get off the stage. And the reason we do that is because we want to push our resource providers If you can't articulate your value within 2 minutes, and we constantly ask our entrepreneurs to give their own elevator pitch, we're doing a disservice. So I think I would put it on put it on the folks that are in your community. Like you need to be able to articulate very quickly your value to a founder. And so
Mm.
for us, that is what's your 2 minute pitch? Founders and resource providers have to do that and have to meet that, or they will be called out.
Yeah. And that probably helps people get really specific on like what is their differentiated point of view, what are the things that they are uniquely equipped to
Yeah.
support a founder on.
What's your gut thing that you would cover in 2 minutes? Like maybe lean into that.
Yeah.
Lean away from all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think that's a great way to close, Amber. If people want to learn more about you or your work, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Well, absolutely. You're welcome to reach out. I'd love to have a conversation. I'll put my email in the chat. And like I said, Bridging Innovation Institute is designed to be able to support other communities in thinking through their models. So would love a conversation. And you're always welcome to come to West Virginia and see the hidden gem that it is, which is no longer going to be hidden because we're getting it out there. So
That's right. That's
awesome.
right. Thank you so much, Amber. Really appreciate it. If folks want to learn more about what we do at Ecomap, you can find us on social media, ecomap_tech, all major platforms. Ecomap.tech is the website. Thanks again. Really appreciate the conversation. I always learn so much when we chat, but perhaps most importantly, I learned how to add special effects to my
Yeah.
music. So,
Thank you. I
yeah.
add a little spice to this one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us, Amber. Thank you so much again. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care. Bye
All
all.
right.